So we finally got a third season of Narcos Mexico. I'm not going to have any footage, obviously, but it concludes the chapter of Amado. It begins the next chapter of El Chapo, and there are some other very interesting new characters that are presented to us, that are introduced to us in season 3. And it's worth the wait. I think it's really worth the wait. I watched all of Narcos Colombia, and I always liked Narcos Mexico a little bit more. I think a lot of the production values carry over to Narcos Mexico. Both shows have incredible cinematography, the locations, the acting. I think to a degree, I think maybe maybe Netflix had a bigger budget and they got some more like Diego Luna. He's kind of a big movie star over there, and even here he's been in some films, but he's not in this. He's not. He makes a brief appearance. There's going to be spoilers in this. I want to talk about the main things that happen without giving everything away. But so it starts with Amado, and the very beginning. There's a cold open. He's back to his old ways. He's transporting the coke on a plane. His plane goes down in the desert. The federales swarm him. They take out his whole crew, and he tries to bribe them. It doesn't work, but they put him in prison for 3 months. You have at the same time, you have Agent Walt. He's on the trail. He's working some new leads. The DEA, they're pretty much just going after Amado at this point. And during this time, you've got the wars are starting to break out. If you've watched all of the rest of Narcos, you know what happens to the other players, but we don't know how exactly Amado's story finishes and how El Chapo's begins. So Tijuana and Sinaloa. At the beginning, you have Juarez and Tijuana. They're pretty much the strongholds of the Mexican cartel. Some of the other branches have kind of fallen off, so to speak. But Sinaloa is actually at the bottom of the totem pole after what happened to Miguel. They have no power structure. They've lost a lot of their territory, and they don't have direct access to the states. So there's a beef between TJ and Sinaloa, and it doesn't end well. They go to war. Concurrently, you have the same thing happens in Colombia. After they get Escobar, the North Valley goes to war with Cali, the Cali cartel, and for a while, the new deal that's negotiated with. Well, before that happens, there's a theme. There's a theme that runs throughout. It's pretty obvious, and I think it's really cool. So in this season, women play a very important role. You see the power structure. You see in the first thing that happens. There's a tragedy that happens with Amado. He loses his daughter to asthma, an asthma attack or arrest. She was born with asthma, and she goes. Her life is taken too soon, and this reopens his eyes to what really matters. Of course, he's very upset about this, but he figures, he's trying to change things. He's trying to expand his operation, but he smartens up. He gets rid of the loose ends, and he tightens up the operation. This is when he starts asking to be paid in cocaine instead of cash. He makes a deal with a very prominent member of government. So he tightens up all of his loose ends, and he puts that behind him. But you can see that affected him. It affected him, and he starts later on. He starts to try to transition out, just like the Cali cartel. They try to get out, and it never ends well for them. He starts a relationship with a new woman, and he plans to go off with her, and he burns some bridges with his business partners, but he pretty much becomes the kingpin. And while this is happening, you have one of the best storylines, really, of the whole entire series is there's this new cop that's introduced. He's a Mexican cop, and like all of the Mexican cops, they can be bribed. They don't make very much money, as the show explains, so they're always bought and paid for. And they don't really do a whole lot of crime solving. But there's this one cop, and he gets onto the case. He gets on this case of a missing girl. A girl goes missing, one of his neighbor's daughters. And so he does spend some of his nights looking. He visits over and over again. He visits the morgue. There's dead girls turning up all the time, but for the longest time he can't find her. There's still hope that she's alive. Months go by, she's still missing, and eventually he finds her, and the worst has happened to her. But that doesn't stop him from looking. But you start to see this guy. He went from being just like there's a common theme here between Walt. You juxtapose Walt's situation. Walt tries to do everything he can for what he thinks is right. People end up getting hurt anyway. Uh, you have a cop who, he's supposed to be protecting people, but he wasn't very good at that. And you can see this starts to eat away at him. He realizes too late that he should have been acting more like a cop all along. So, he thinks to himself, it's almost as if he wishes, he keeps carrying that photo around. He has the photo of the girl. He carries it around with him so he can try to identify her, but it keeps weighing on his mind. Maybe he should have paid a little more attention sooner. All the time that he spent trying to look for her, maybe if he had taken it more seriously, he would have found her. But actually, in the reality, she was just one of many girls, part of pretty much some kind of a ring of prostitution gone horribly wrong. And he keeps tracking down this guy. He's trying to find the guy responsible for all these women being murdered. Eventually finds the guy, and he kills him, only to find that there were so many. This thing is just going on. There's no end to it. Eventually, you pretty much see what's going to happen to him in the end. But he's a great character. It's a really sad storyline because his better nature. He continues to search even when he's off the force. A lot of things happen with him, but he realizes, just like Amato realized, maybe I should have paid attention to my family sooner. Maybe I could have been there to do something. Maybe I should have done what I could. As a police officer, maybe this wouldn't happen, but it's unrealistic. In both cases, it's unrealistic. You have two characters. They're trying to do the most. But it's not enough. Amato, there's a great conversation between Pacho and Amato's like, eventually everything goes wrong. So you can't avoid that. You can't avoid the problems. Can't avoid the problems that will arise, but he puts in a system to try and contain it. It's all about containment. Another great storyline is that all throughout the season, there's a female reporter at a Mexican newspaper. They're the only newspaper that's actually doing real journalism. They report whatever they find about the cartel, no matter how many people don't like it. They tell the story as it is, and they get into a lot of trouble for that. So you follow Andrea, and she's a great character too. There's a lot of women, there's a lot of female characters in the storyline that play an important role. The other is Dina from the TJ family. She's the boss woman. She really takes over the operation. We saw some other characters like that in the other seasons. They were really cool, but it's all about Dina, Andrea, Walt, the Mexican cop, I forget his name, and Amato. Some great storylines. And El Chapo, you see what happens to him. He kills Dina's husband. That's what starts the war with TJ, and they go to war. Eventually, Chapo gets captured, and it's in prison that we see him. He's getting coached and mentored by forget his name, but he used to be the right hand man of Miguel and the Sinaloa cartel. So Chapo starts making moves from prison. There are a lot of interesting characters. and the storylines in season three. It's really good. Uh, I think the production values, it must have been made during the pandemic, but they haven't skipped a beat with the production values. Really on par with what we've seen in all of the other iterations. It pretty much concludes that whole storyline. There's still more of Chapo. It pretty much ends with Chapo. He's still in prison. I think this is before his first escape from prison. So I don't think there's going to be a season four. I think they've confirmed season three to be the last. But there are already, maybe in the future they could do something with Chapo. But Chapo, there's already been other stories about Chapo. But I think Narcos is one of the best shows out there in the last decade. The production values are really good. The acting, the writing, the directing, the cinematography. It's a really interesting show because it is historic fiction. So, good editing, good everything, good music. El Castillo never gets old. Season 3, uh, I think it was worth the wait. I'm glad they were able to produce season 3. Uh, they had more story to tell. And there's 6 seasons of Narcos. Narcos and Narcos Mexico combined. Really good shows, good stuff. And I'm glad I got to watch it. I would definitely recommend getting back on Netflix if you have it, or waiting till you can find season 3. And if you haven't watched the rest of Narcos, it's worth watching. I think it's a really good show. Like I said, I've seen a lot of TV. I know what I'm talking about. It's a violent show, a very dramatic show, but it's very interesting. There's real attention, and there's a lot of. It's a fun show. It's really interesting because they try to humanize. They try to humanize both sides. That's what makes it a good show. If it's anything, it's they try to take the cartel members and humanize them, and they also try to do the same with the DEA, and they both have their good and bad. That's what keeps it interesting. You get to see both sides. And it's also just a look at the past. Things aren't the same today. The cartels, the mafia, that's all gone away because of technology. But it's a really interesting time period that's been captured in a TV show, and I think it's really worth a watch.